Hello everyone, my name is Mr. Colada, and today I am so confused because the BBC News made a video about Poppy Playtime. So I just finished editing my Fusion video, it's exporting right now, and I went onto YouTube to watch some YouTube videos, obviously, and I saw that the BBC made a video about Poppy Playtime. I'm so confused because if you go on the videos, you see the Iran war, you see some space stuff, and you scroll down a bit, you see Poppy Playtime, and it's so random. Like you seen Donald Trump here, you got Power Wash Simulator, Resident. I'm so confused. So today, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna react to the BBC talking about Poppy Playtime, the game that has more fans than players. True, actually, really true. The reason why it's true is because so many people. By the way, I am AFK on 4 and I get an XP because I cannot be asked to play this season. But as I was saying, if you look at the sales for Poppy Playtime Chapter 5, 250,000 people bought Poppy Playtime Chapter 5 in the first week, which is insane, by the way. But if you see videos of people making videos of it, the Markiplier live stream or Think Noodles or any other YouTuber, like they have millions and millions and millions of views. So it's kind of true, actually. So I'm gonna shut up and I'm going to react to this video.
There's a little bit of fatigue that can kick in too. If you get excited about a new character, dead. Next chapter, a new character you're excited about, dead. It'd be nice to have some of them survive, right?
True, true. Actually, yeah. I mean, Catnap is dead. Dog Day unknown. But I understand what this person is saying.
Are your children safe from Playtime Co.'s latest toy?
Employees see things.
Hey, Jack! Well, I
Since
just
its
skipped the
first
trailer.
chapter, Poppy Playtime has become one of the most
It's so weird seeing the BBC making a video about this.
talked about indie horror games in recent years. Known for its jump scares and eerie horror, the game draws players in with its tense
Look at Huggy Wuggy in the first chapter compared to now. Oh my god.
immersive world. Some of the creepiness comes from the found footage style VHS tapes scattered throughout the game, which build the story alongside videos on YouTube, deepening the lore for fans. Poppy Playtime is a horror puzzle game set in an abandoned
Oh my god, the eerie music. Is this just telling us about the inside of what Poppy Playtime is? Because I kind of already
toy
know this.
factory where players must solve challenges while avoiding toys that contain human consciousness. While many first encounter it through children, Huggy Wuggy toys, school playground chatter, or viral YouTube clips, the game has a much broader following. Chapter 5, released in March 2026, sold 110,000 copies in its first 3 hours.
Wow. Oh my god, I did not know that. That is insane. Jesus Christ, 110,000 copies in 3 hours. That is mad, by the way. That is an insane fact.
And 275,000 in its first
Okay, so it is actually more. Okay, because I said 250,000. I didn't know it was actually more.
week, topping global sales charts on Steam and reaching #1 on Twitch.
Wow. That's a record to have, by the way. #1 on Twitch. Sorry if I'm going back XP on Fortnite. But wow, that is an amazing achievement to get, by the way, from Poppy Playtime. They don't really have a lot of achievements. I think they got something from Xbox, like beating like #1, I think, on the sales at Xbox last year when Chapter 3 came out. I can't remember though. And I always say that Poppy Playtime is so eerie, man. It always is.
Characters like Huggy Wuggy, Yarnaby, and Lily Lovebraids are among those responsible for hooking the attention of millions.
I would say Lily. Actually, yeah, because she kind of struck a quite controversial thing with her design. Because obviously not a lot of people liked her. I could say Catnap. The Smiling Critters obviously were the main reason why Poppy Playtime Chapter 3 was so popular.
With Mob Entertainment's YouTube channel recently surpassing 1 billion views, it's safe to say that the popularity doesn't seem to be dwindling. The association with children runs deep, with official collaborations in
I want to do this video. I had a idea, and I saw this person did this as well, where this person survived 100 days in Minecraft for your playtime, because in Bedrock Edition you have like this mod, not really mod, like this pattern you can play, where it's like this world, you know, and you have to survive, you know, catnap, huggy wuggy, man with long legs, stuff like that, you know. And I really want to do it for like a video. It's like surviving 100 days, quite similar to what he did, you know. It'd be really cool to do, and I'm really tempted to do it.
Minecraft, as well as Fortnite.
Not the Fortnite collaboration. Bro, I can show you my... I don't know if I can even do it. Can I even do... Hang on. Oh, there we go. Yep, I am currently AFKing on Fortnite. Getting XP as playing as Huggy Wuggy. Oh my god, that is amazing.
Huggy Wuggy merch, both official and unofficial, appearing seemingly everywhere.
I mean, to be fair, Huggy Wuggy is like the mascot of Poppy Playtime. So it makes sense why.
However, the adult fandom of Poppy Playtime is just as huge, drawn in by its mix of horror, mystery, and intricate storytelling.
I think the reason why a lot of adults, including me, like Poppy Playtime is because I feel like they hit on a nostalgic level with its eerie music and like toys, nostalgic stuff, you know? Because when I first saw the Smiling Critters, the first thing that came to my mind was the Care Bears, which I used to be afraid of, believe it or not. And also like this TV show on YouTube, which I think they cancelled it now, or like they stopped making it, called Happy Tree Friends, you know? Which kind of remind me of like those from the Smiling Critters.
Older players engage extensively with its story,
Yes.
creating art, analysing lore, and debating theories online.
Whoa, whoa, where do you think you're going there, buddy? Look, I know it's exciting, but before we can get you out there on the factory floor, we've got to talk about safety, huh?
Yeah, the lore of Poppy Playtime is really deep. I say it's up there as like the biggest lore for Poppy Playtime, simply because like for Poppy Playtime, what the biggest lore in video gaming history, simply because it's so deep and it hits on such a emotional impact and level. It's so creative. Because people say it's very similar to Finance Affiliates, and I disagree on so many levels, man.
But for all its popularity, Poppy Playtime hasn't existed without controversy.
There was a video that I wanted to react to this YouTuber, I think it's called Cooper or Copper, I think it is. Which he went through all the Poppy Playtime, like, controversial stuff. I wanted to do a reaction to it, but I don't know if I want to. I might do it, like, in a month or so. But yeah.
From early backlash over NFTs.
Oh yeah, the NFTs. Oh, the NFTs. Jesus Christ. I mean, to be fair though, what you could do is you could just like get an image of that and just like, I don't know, photocopy it. You know, like you go to Tesco and just get it, you know, printed out. You know, hence why like over there, I got the the Poppy Playtime poster. Like I got that printed. Like, it's not official, it's just printed, because it just looks really cool, so, yeah.
To accusations that the game was too frightening for the young audience who embraced it.
I understand why, you know, it's... Yeah, because you think about it, it's innocent toys, but being reimagined into, like, this horror character, you know? You could say the same thing with Finance Affiliates as well.
The series has spent years walking a tightrope between creativity and criticism.
That's just people being dicks, you know. There's always people out there that have to argue about everything, you know. There's always people out there that have to argue about everything, you know. If that's like, you know, Call of Duty zombie maps, you know, people say that, okay, Horizon Drac isn't a good map, you know, or Call of the Dead isn't a great map, you know. Like, there's always people out there that's got to be like a prick and say, oh, you know, this person can't like it because blah, 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 you know? It's so stupid, man.
So when I spoke to the people behind the game, I wanted to understand how they handled that pressure and how they balance horror with the...
Look at that, probably, that, oh, let me go back.
I wanted to understand how they handled that pressure and how they...
Look at that Huggy Wuggy one. I think that's the 72-inch one. I think it's like 50 quid, though. Oh, my God.
balance horror with the responsibility of creating something children inevitably latch onto.
I think this game is for teens. I'm pretty sure, unless it's like PG-12. I'm pretty sure, but yeah, this game is really great on the emotion, like I mentioned before. So
It's a very interesting development experience because we have, as you've identified there, a very broad audience of players, from fairly young, casual players to more mature, core gaming audience players. And so that makes it a difficult game to satisfy all tastes and playstyles. But it also means that we tune a lot of our decisions.
oh, to be fair though, there's always an audience for everything. I think people need to realize that there's always going to be an audience for someone. You know, if people like horror games, you know, probably Playtime's for you. If you like shooter games, you know, Battlefield, Call of Duty, Fortnite, PUBG, you know, those games are for you. You know, if you like puzzle games, probably Playtime's there for you. If you like, you know, board games, you know, Uno, Solitaire, there for you. You know, there's always an audience for everyone.
To make sure that we can kind of keep the accessibility just right, where the horror is measured and calculated, that we don't alienate our youthful audience members or people.
Well, that's the problem with having, you know, youthful audience, right? The reason why it's very, you know, unfortunate, because like chapter 3 will always be the most, you know, horror horror playtime out there. It's the most scariest one out of the whole lot, you know. And I when I made my thoughts video, I forgot to mention about the horror aspect about chapter 5. I don't know how I forgot that, but it wasn't really scary. I didn't really jump. There were some like random events that happened that made me jump, which I think is the main part. But Poor Playtime isn't really made for kids, you know, because you see dead bodies, you see blood, you know, you see horror, you see all this stuff, experimental stuff, you know, and you hear that eerie music, and it leads to like very big controversial stuff because it's not for kids, you know, it's for teenagers or older audience. But I understand why people may like younger audience may like Poor Playtime because of the toys.
Not necessarily core horror fans, but also still have enough teeth that we can draw in and engage a more mature audience.
Some parents have said that it's not quite appropriate for children. So how would you respond to that? And is that
What I'll respond is don't play the game. If you're too young to play it, don't play it.
something you think about when you're coming up with these stories?
A lot of us are parents, and a lot of us are concerned about making sure that we never go past that line, right?
That's the problem with a lot of things, you know, about going past the line. It's the main reason why Final Fantasy 2, the movie, wasn't really that great. Because I always say that FNAF movie should always be a 16 or an 18. Because obviously, majority of the audience are now adults now. So, or like, you know, older teens. So that's why I think that not Power Playtime, the FNAF movie should be, you know, older, you know, like 18, 16 years old to have that, you know, to finally reach its potential. Same with Power Playtime, you know. Why is the audio stopped? Oh, what?
Children. And we are very, very sensitive about that. But also, we don't, as we all know, like if you make things too kiddie, then children will be like, I don't want to interact with this, right? This is baby stuff, right? So we're constantly asking those questions, right? And we're
They do say, I see this on Twitter, they do say that they want to make Power Playtime, you know, they keep saying, okay, we'll make it more scary and more scary and more scarier. People said that Chapter 5 was like really scary. It wasn't really as scary as I, you know, anticipated, you know. I wasn't like, oh my god, holy shit, I'm terrified, you know. I was more shocked in a lot of areas, you know, jaw dropping.
very aware that we were very aware of that line, and when we cross that line, we always bring it back. We have wonderful conversations. We have people who we've specifically hired to keep us pushing that line and also pushing back. We have a wonderful push pull, right? Is it toyetic enough? Is it creepy enough, right? And that is another of our core pillars, is making sure that that mix of creepy and cute is not only natural but holistic for everything we do. And it's a constant debate, and we're super aware of it.
Hi, my name is Anthony, but mostly known as Nice.
Why do you think that Poppy Playtime is such a huge phenomenon? Why do you think it strikes a chord with so many people, whether younger or older?
The story and the characters, as soon as you see Huggy Wuggy, for example, it instantly gets your attention. And with every new character, especially with Chapter 5,
Well, the thing is, adding Huggy Wuggy back is, brought back a lot of players because when we play Chapter 4, right, and we see that Huggy Wuggy is back in Chapter 4, everyone was so curious about the next chapter. That's probably why the sales were so high on the game. Because so many people wanted to know, okay, Huggy Wuggy is finally back. Everyone thought he died, but he didn't. We saw his fur in Chapter 2 as well. So having that mystery and that curiosity in the point of playtime works really well. So that's probably why that when we saw Huggy Wuggy, we get engaged instantly because it's a character that everyone adores. It makes sense why
With Lily Love Braids, with the prototype as well. Poppy Playtime has
obviously showing the prototype in chapter 5 was a big thing because everyone wanted to know what he looked like after 4 chapters, and we finally know what he looks like. A lot of people are not happy about his design, others are quite happy. I'm kind of mixed. I feel like it could be better, but I also like how his design resembles a Jack in the Box as well.
grown so much over the years, and the story especially, just the mystery behind Poppy Playtime is what's the beauty behind the game. They don't just spoon feed you stuff. You have to play the game. You have to dig into the lore. You have to find VH.
I know that the lore is quite like messy in chapter 5. I was talking to a few friends the other day while playing Fortnite, and it was quite messy. They told me that there's some areas that were quite messy and quite confusing, and I didn't really know what the purple, like the pink or purple goo is. We get thrown into. Like I was confused. Where did we get thrown into? Until they finally told me. I was like, oh, I see. That makes sense. And so yeah. Also, I am sorry if I keep calling is it Gilbert? Yeah, I think his name is Gilbert, but I call him Gilbert. I am sorry for that. I just always called him Gilbert for some reason.
Jazz tapes, note scattered around.
It's so cool to see that Jack was in chapter 2. By the way, I always say it. Like, it's so cool to see him, in chapter 2. And I'm pretty sure we actually praised chapter 5 quite a bit. There were some things he didn't like, but there was also some things he did like
Here and there, and that's just the beauty of it. Just the story and the mystery behind Poppy Playtime is what gets people really engaged.
So when you're coming up with these new characters and you're discussing them, is it always in the back of your mind that you're trying to make a character who's more iconic than Huggy Wuggy?
It's not necessarily that, but we have this filter that we always look through, which is kind of a toy.
Well, I generally think that the smiling critters are more iconic than Huggy Wuggy, I feel like, but at the same time, I feel like they're not as well. Because chapter 3 was so popular because of the catnap and, the smiling critters and everything. And that's why that they always bring back the smiling critters in every chapter now. We saw the smiling critters in Safe Haven. We saw them during the mini game when we play as Huggy Wuggy. They always trying to find a way to bring back the smiling critters. Because they're so popular, and we even saw it on the VHS tape with Hoppy Hopscotch and Barber Chops.
Filter, right? And we have some wonderful, wonderful artists here who truly bring life to these toys and these creatures. And sometimes we start with art first, which I know is sometimes rare. Again, sometimes an artist would bring something to a meeting and we're like, oh, we need to tell a story about that character. Happens all the time. It happened in.
Yeah, true, but at the same time, I feel like Power Playtime do kind of leave out characters. They don't really have like a mystery. Like, for example, with Catnap, right? We only see parts of his fur on the back of the prototype's body, which kind of leaves the question. What about the claws? What about the arms? What about the rest, the head and stuff like. That's why people thought like he was going to be like a character with like the Catnap's head or something. Or the body of Mummy Longlegs. That's what we kind of thought, not just the arm of Mummy Longlegs and like the like the skin bit of the back of the prototype.
Chapter 5. And it's very exciting. And I'll give an example. Wrong side animals.
Hate them. I literally made my review. I hate them because they mean nothing in chapter 5. They're just collectibles. That's literally
that
it.
were in chapter 5, and that was just an artist riffing in a meeting, and we were like, yes, please, let's figure this out, right?
But they mean nothing in chapter 5.
So that spawned like a whole new kind of line of characters that are in the game, and we're exploring now in other formats. So yeah, absolutely. We are children. We have children. We have multiple generations, right? That are working together. So we're always looking through that filter.
What is your name?
I love this video so much. I love the restricted videos so much. They're so interesting, especially with the catnap one, because it builds on the idea that the toys get brainwashed into thinking that they are toys, and we find that out in chapter 5 as well with Miss Grace VHH tapes, and also playing as Huggy Wuggy as well.
What is your experiment number? Can you tell
So
me who you are?
menacing.
The game has now reached 5 chapters, with a new release.
You see what I mean? That's why I feel like Chapter 3 is so popular, because they had that year, they had that half of a year gap to release it, Chapter 4 and Chapter 5 came out roughly the same, time period. I think Chapter 4 came out in February, this one came out in March, right? I feel like they should do this again, have that year and a half break instead of, constantly making new Poppy Playtimes, every year. Have a year and a half break, not a year, have a year and a half to figure out stuff. That's why Chapter 3 was so popular, and they had that big change, because in Chapter 2, from Chapter 3, the change and the dynamics is so unique.
Arrive in almost every year. But who's behind these creepy characters, and what comes next? Poppy Playtime didn't begin as a massive franchise. It began with 2 brothers.
Zach. That's his name, Zach. So, fun fact, originally, they were a Minecraft animation group, I think called Enchanted Mob, which I used to watch as a kid, and I didn't realize. Oh my god.
In a bedroom, building the earliest versions of this world long before anyone knew what it would become.
It's been really fascinating to see how the studio's changed and grown. Chapter 3, when it was in development, was the most complex, largest scale project the studio had tried to take on.
Yeah, because that's probably why it's so popular, because you push boundaries, you take big risks, and they work. Like, look at the Smiling Critters, how popular they became.
And it was an immense challenge for us to get that out the door, and it was...
I still think they should have like an animation thing that they can do, Like, I've seen it on YouTube of the animation of Smiling Critters, right? They should have like another one for they should make their own like official ones. They'd be
really
so
awesome
cool
to see how it was received by the audience. But over time, we've been trying to figure out, how do we really shoot for the stars? What are the ways that we can set up the studio cycle over cycle to make something bigger and better each time? And so that's been one of the things I've loved the most about this journey, is seeing how the studio has sort of grown from this independent small team with a lot of passion, but not a...
That's what I like about Chapter 3 as well, is because, when the hands move, like in Chapter 1, 2, the hands don't really move that much. They kind of like do like kind of that when you kind of walk in. But in Chapter 3, they really show that dramatic when you move it, like kind of like this instead of like that, It's so unique, and I love it so much. I love when the hands move in Chapter 4 as well, and they just tremble randomly. It's so unique.
A lot of experience in making games at this scale. And now we've got a bigger team, more experience, a lot more disciplines. Really interesting to see how we're setting up the foundation for the future so that we can tackle bigger and more exciting challenges down the road. So
I've also heard a lot of things on Twitter, right, that Chapter 6 may not be the last chapter. And I wouldn't mind that, I wouldn't mind that. But it'd be interesting how they would make a 7th chapter if they do plan to make one. But I've seen so many like Twitter posts, about that the directors say at Poppy Playtime that don't worry about the next chapter. We always have plans for the future, and it makes you think, will there be a 7th one?
That, from a studio development perspective, has been really cool. And personally, when I first joined the studio, I was not expecting to be sort of swept off my feet in the way that I was. The team really has such an infectious energy where they love what they do. The passion for the craft is some of the best I've ever seen in my entire career. And when I landed here, I was just so taken in by that. It was such a creative revival for me. So helping the team and the studio and the product grow these past few releases has just been really gratifying for me.
If you have a look on Reddit, you'll see some people discussing about senior team members moving on over the years. So I just wanted to ask on their behalf, really, has that changed the direction of the narrative at all?
So
In my personal opinion, right, I felt like yes, because they did change the writing director for chapter 4. Actually, they changed the director, which I think is the main reason why chapter 4 and 3 there's such a big jump between them. So that's why I feel like chapter 4, you know, compared to chapter 3 is quite big.
what I can say to that is with any company and any IP that happens, right? Um, the the cool thing here, and one of the reasons I'm here, is the founders, the creators are still here.
That is, oh my god, look at that. Okay, I actually never seen it up close, but we kind of thought this is like what Catnap prays to, basically, right? So originally, people thought that would be kind of like what the prototype would look like. A bunch of toys mixed into one. You see all the smiling critters. You see Pugapilla. You see Bonzo Bonnie. You see Huggy Wuggy up there. People thought, okay, this would basically be what the prototype might look like.
Right.
But
I
no.
found in the past when the founders move on or the initial creators move on, I think some of the spirit of the project dies and the world building dies, right? You go from creation to life support. But that is not the case here. So we still have the people who crafted this world in their room with the bunk bed. Like, they showed it to me. Like one time they were at home visiting family, and they had a meeting from their room, and they're like, yeah, this is where Poppy was created. It's like it was their room. It's two brothers, and they had a bunk bed, and they were talking about, the worlds they wanted to create. So I think that as long as we have that core, we'll be fine. And we do have a lot of new people coming in, which I think is wonderful. And the I think the question behind the question is the core of Poppy still there? And the answer is absolutely, absolutely.
That if you talk about the actual character Poppy, I feel like she's been quite distant with all the recent Poppy playtimes, and actually kind of in a lot of Poppy playtimes throughout. Obviously Poppy playtime. Poppy, is the main character. Obviously, well, we are the main character. She's kind of like the main protagonist. Like she is the whole image of Poppy playtime as well. But at the same time, Poppy playtime, like they need to be careful with how they would go about doing future chapters, especially, and also introducing Poppy a lot more. Because obviously, in chapter 5, we only saw her at Lily's bit, and we don't really see her much, and then we see her again near enough at the end of her playtime, on that train, and, going towards the train as well. So, we don't really see her much. I feel like the most we see her is probably chapter 4 in Safe Haven. But then again, I feel like she doesn't get enough screen time as well.
One of the most fascinating things about Poppy
Show Jack.
Playtime
Jack Sean.
is that a huge portion of its fans have never actually played the game themselves. Instead, they've experienced it through major creators like Jacksepticeye, Dan TDM, and Hollow, whose playthroughs of each chapter routinely rack up millions of views.
Yes, true. Millions of people. I think it's because a lot of people, are like a lot of the fans are console people, like console players. So obviously, when the next part of playtime, they come to Xbox, or PlayStation, right? When they have that import, so many people are buying it. That's why I think like Power Playtime Chapter 1, I think it's got like a 4.7 stars, out of 5. Same with Chapter 2. I think that's like 4.8 or 7 or maybe 6. Then obviously with chapter 3, I think that's at like 4.9 out of 5. So it's insane because so many people obviously want that port because not everyone has a PC. So
in general, we try to remember that there's two core audiences. This is a problem across all game development, particularly when you get a certain kind of game that you make that, like Poppy, has a huge viewership and not just a huge playership. Is that content creators play the game with fundamentally different expectations than your normal day-to-day players. And so it's important to
I think it's also important to realize that everyone, is entitled to their own opinions and everyone has different views of Poppy Playtime. You know, some people might hate it, some people might like it, some people might think it's brainwashed, some people might think, you know, it isn't. You know, a lot of people, you know, they have different thoughts and stuff, and it's really interesting, you know, to get someone else's, you know, ideology on Poppy Playtime. You know,
honor both, because if you focus too much on pleasing content creators, then sometimes you'll end up alienating the parts of the game that your fans like.
true. I think like Call of Duty does that a lot. To be fair, you know, they know what content creators like, so they do that. You know, so a lot of people, you know, because obviously when content creators, including me, when they talk about Poppy Playtime, you know, a lot of the stuff, you know, can be quite controversial to what other people may think. It's the same thing with um what Markiplier said. Like, he hated Chapter 5. He hated it, you know. And I understand why he may hate it, but with me, I do not hate Poppy Playtime. I like it to a lot of an extent, you know. Again, there were some elements that I did not like about Chapter 5 a lot. But at the same time, I think it's also a very positive game as well. I think people need to realize that, you know, everyone's entitled to their own opinions. Everyone will have different thoughts on Poppy Playtime. You know, some people may think that, you know, Poppy Playtime is, you know, the worst game ever. Some people may think it's the best game ever. You know, I saw some people that think that Chapter 3 is their favorite game of all time, and it's in my top 5. You know, it's in my top 5 favorite games of all time, simply because it changed me as a person and my personality. You know, and it, you know, messed with my emotions a lot when I was recording it and playing through it. So yeah, Power Playtime, they have a big, you know, audience, right? And content creators, you know, I think they need to realize that, you know, they're not like the boss of Power Playtime. They need to like maybe step down a bit and like, you know, think of it as like a casual game and not just, you know, okay, I'm recording this for my fans. This will get millions and millions and millions of views. Let's go. I'm going to be biased. So other people may think it to be biased. That's why I feel like when Markiplier talked about Chapter 5, I did not like what he said about the game because a lot of stuff is quite false. Like him saying something on the lines of like, we don't know a lot about Playtime when, in matter of fact, we do. So I'm not like, you know, attacking Markiplier. Obviously, I think, you know, Mark, you know, entitled to his own opinions. You know, he has some interesting thoughts about Chapter 6, but I think a lot of, again, we're all entitled to our own opinions. Everyone will think of it differently.
And vice versa. So we try to be mindful of both because it is a really powerful and exciting thing to be able to see these great content creators out there creating stuff. And the team gets super invigorated when we see cool new content come out. We internally, we consume a lot of it. We have a great time seeing new streamers or reaction videos.
How much you want to bet they watch me? How much you want to bet? Oh my god. In the unlikely event of them actually watching this video or watching any of my Power Playtime videos, you know, just say hello. I'll be so shocked.
From people and some of the great moments it will create.
Is that Creekcraft?
Just focus on running!
Oh my god, Dorko in that bit! He was screaming? What? I've actually never really watched any videos, you know, about outside of mine because I wanted to like go back. Also, I'm sorry if like a lot of the bits about Chapter 4 was so like Chapter 4, Chapter 5 was so buggy and like really like off-putting on the graphics and like the visual style. Not my fault, by the way. I think it's to do with Google Drive because originally what I do is I plug in my phone to my computer, my old computer, and boom, I can just transport videos. And now I can't do that. I have to do it through Google Drive. It's a pain in the ass to do. But man, that reaction with Dorko is so surprising. My reaction was just this. Utter shock.
I think if we do our jobs well as a developer, we will create those moments naturally, and then they'll come through for streamers. But we definitely will take a step back and think to ourselves, oh man, this will be a great moment to see somebody streaming because it's just going to provoke such an exciting reaction. You're going to see the chat light up, and that's a fun experience on its own. So, well, we have to be careful about what feedback we address.
The thing is with me, I would never do a full gameplay video. Never would do it. I might do it occasionally or like maybe once. I could never do it because I would rather split it into parts than post them out throughout different days. The thing with me doing that is that I get so distracted with other videos. Hence why it took me like over, I think, 8 months to do Undertale, you know, complete that game, you know? And it took me a while to do, you know, other games like Into the Pit, you know? So that's why, and also, you know, Fusion's kind of like a side project, you know, I do occasionally, you know, same with Minecraft I did my hardcore series as well. I think a lot of the time I do leave out a lot of series. Like I'm leaving out Sister Location. I'm leaving out FNAF World, and I think it's to do with the fact is that I either don't enjoy making those videos or that I would rather make something else instead. So that's why when Power Playtime comes out, I'm on it instantly. I'm constantly making videos. That's why there's a massive wave of Chapter 5 when it comes out. Hence why well, I didn't record Chapter 5 until recently, like obviously you've seen. But when Chapter 5 came out, and the gameplay trailer and all that stuff, because I was about, I think, a month late into the game. Um, I just, I don't know how to describe it. Like, I made so many videos for Chapter 5, if that's reactions to music, or if that is, just me talking about Chapter 5 personally, like when I did my video about, Fire Playtime Chapter 5 is having a lot of unnecessarily hate, so, and my theory video as well. I made 5 videos about Chapter 5, and I didn't play Chapter 5.
Yes, and like how and when to make sure that we're honoring the full spectrum of our audience. We still also get that moment where we think to ourselves, oh, that's going to be a great moment to see so and so play. Oh, I can't wait to see how they react to that. So we try to do both.
When it comes to streamers and YouTubers who are playing through your game, how much of an impact do you think that's had on this fandom?
Love that question, and I'm sure you know the answer. It's massive. It's massive. It's
I was just mess. I'm not gonna. Yeah, but like, it is true. I feel like, if you don't have, content creators making, videos about your game, it isn't going to be very popular. That's why when Battlefield 6 came out, so many content creators, migrated to that game for like the first month, and now it's dead because no one makes videos on it anymore. So, you got to think outside of, the main popular content creators like Dorko, Dante, DM, Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, Creekcraft, um, all of those content creators, obviously, like those are the popular ones. They get a lot of people making, the videos. They get millions of views. But you also got to think outside of, those content creators. And think of like smaller content creators, like like me included, but people, on TikTok instead. That help carry out that fandom. Because if it wasn't for, my friend showing me a video about Boy Playtime Chapter 3 trailer, which, he said that he didn't do it, but he did. but if it wasn't for like, me getting videos on TikTok about Boy Playtime because of those other content creators, trust me, I probably would never get into this franchise as much as I thought I would.
absolutely titanic. We owe our success to our player base as well as the streamers and the online theory crafters.
Another thing I do want to say is that these game design, these gaming companies out there nowadays, they care about money a lot. That's why Call of Duty, they don't really care about the community as much. They care about making as much money as possible. Same with Fortnite as well. With them decreasing V-Bucks as well, which is very unfortunate. The reason why they're doing it. They're making dumb excuses, but they can afford to have the rock in Fortnite. Obviously they care about money a lot. To fund the game. But at the same time, it doesn't really come down to money as well because you got these smaller indie games. Like Schedule One, like these random tycoon games like supermarkets, together, or Undertale, Stardew Valley. These people might have a small group or just one single developer making these games, and they don't care about money. They care about the final product. How people would generally think about the game. And then they add new content. That's why I feel like microtransactions in video games kind of ruin gaming because it cared about more money than actual enjoyment of making the game instead.
It is part of who we are, right? Like our team comes from animators on YouTube, and it comes from horror fans, and it comes from game fans, and we've been really embraced by our community. So yes, and it's a back and forth. It's a conversation, and when we craft moments, we always think about, is this something that the streamers will enjoy? Is this something that the players will enjoy? Will they be talking about it? Another of our pillars is never turn the lights on 100%. There's a lot of theory crafting because we don't want to give you the full story. Yes, we have it, but we also want you to talk about it.
That's what I love about theories because people kind of like go out their way and think about different things. That's why I made 3 theory videos, and I don't make theory videos, right? Like I'm a variety content creator, so obviously I make kind of basically everything. But when I make my 3 theory videos on Power Playtime, I love them so much, especially my new one. About not every toy is a villain, including the prototype. So I generally love that so much because it just like everyone kind of put pieces they put puzzles together, to think like who we are as well. We could be a toy, we could be a human. We could be a toy now because we've been thrown in that vat of goo stuff. Apparently that helps with like adding cells back together. That's probably why the prototype didn't kill us instead and just thrown us in there.
We want you to debate it. So it is very much a live conversation, which is actually very exciting for us.
Poppy Playtime has faced increasing criticism from streamers and fans alike, most notably Markiplier, whose 8-minute
Oh, are we going to talk about
about
this?
the game recently went viral.
Here's an interesting character gone. This character's
Oh, Markiplier's in the way of my camera. Hang on, let me change that. There we go. Fixed it.
injured, gone. This character's interesting to be around you for a bit, gone.
True. You know what? Actually, that is a good argument, actually. It kind of says something that I said recently with characters disappearing and then, reappearing or just never appearing again, like Chum, so...
Much of the backlash centers on the series leaning too heavily into repetitive chase sequence gameplay, as well
Again, I don't feel like the chase scenes were that bad. Because it did a great job on, always being on your toes, adding that suspense and, adding that high tension every time you go into a new area.
as introducing new characters only for them to be killed off, or seemingly killed off, almost immediately.
Oh man, this
Yeah, true. You got one like, Pianosaurus, appearing and then just disappearing in the first like 7 seconds.
this is a big talking point within the studio as well as outside of the studio. We have a lot of characters, as people have observed. We spent a lot of time internally bringing this character to life. Iterations on the concept, iterations on the modeling, the rigging, the texture, the whole shebang that it takes to make something in a video game come to life. It's a cross-discipline effort. It takes a huge amount of time and resources from a lot of talented developers. And then, like Pianosaurus, you have like 10 seconds on screen and then they're gone. And it's definitely tough because there's a lot of resources that go into making those things that it would be good for us to be able to get a little bit more out of. But also when you see them resonate with the fans and they're like, oh, I love that character. Oh no, I don't get any more of that character. I think there's a little bit of a change in the studio in terms of like, once upon a time, these were meant to be sort of bite-sized experiences. These characters were stepping stones building toward a greater future, but we're seeing a lot of them resonate with players a lot longer. And a lot of players really want a longer developed character arc to learn more about these toys.
Yeah, that's probably why I didn't like Chum, Gilbert. I'm gonna call him Gilbert now because I'm Gilbert. I'm gonna call him Gilbert. Who cares? But that's why I didn't really like those 2 characters. Yes, the design on both of them are really cool, but at the same time, they don't really appear much. They just kind of disappear. We don't see Gilbert until the end of Royal Playtime Chapter 5. We never see Chum again. It's weird.
These people that we introduce. And so we're kind of thinking a lot about that into the future of the universe and the future of the of where we're going, is that how can we make sure that we better honor fans' excitement and interest in these characters? Because there's a little bit of fatigue that can kick in too. If you get excited about a new character, dead. Next chapter, a new character you're excited about, dead. It's
Yeah, it makes sense why they kill off characters as well. Like it makes sense why, because it'd be kind of hard to have characters roaming about still. Like Catnap or Mummy Longlegs. Mr. Light. Lily as well. They have loads of characters. That like a lot of people are confused about. They don't really understand why that they go. But at the same time, I do understand why they must go as well. To have room for other newer characters, like Doey or like Yarnaby. Like it makes sense why.
it'd be nice to keep some of them survive, right? So
And that's why they kept Poppy, Kissy, Huggy Wuggy, because they have a big involvement in
something
Playtime.
we're definitely thinking about all the time. Everybody has their opinion.
I mean, that's probably why also they kept alive Huggy Wuggy, because obviously he is such a popular character, he has such a big impact in Playtime. That's why, you know, they probably decided, okay, so in chapter 2 and 3, he is going to be dead, right? He's been killed off. But in chapter 4, he will come back again because everyone loved him.
Opinions, and not every opinion can speak for you. Obviously, you have to look into the game yourself and play the game yourself to get your own opinion. For me, I'm a really big chase guy, so when Chapter 5 introduced a bunch of chases and more action, I instantly fell in love with it. That's what
I I wouldn't say that I loved it, but I say I wouldn't mind them because, again, did that great job in building high tension and suspense.
I felt about
But I didn't like Lily's chasing though.
Chapter 4. It lacked a little bit of action, so when Chapter 5 gave us just chases, action, it really did hype me up, and I was really glad to see that they really did lock in with the action for this new.
Yeah, I massively agree about that. You know, having that action everywhere. You know, I strongly agree with that statement.
Chapter.
So with the Puppy Playtime movie in the works, or
Oh, the Puppy Playtime movie! Oh, come on! Oh my god, I could not wait for this to come out. I generally can't wait. I think it might come out next year or in 2028.
is coming at some point, does that put extra pressure on getting the end of the story right?
Luckily, it doesn't really, because we kind of know where we're going. And
It was so crazy to see it though. Like, how would they do it?
and we have a wonderful relationship with our film partners, and we've shared the story with them of the game, and we're working
To be fair though, they probably have the entire story already. You know, like obviously they know what's going to happen in chapter 6. You know, before chapter 5 even came out. So
together on the film story. So our hope is that it'll be holistic. You know, one won't fight the other. One will, they'll both support each other. And they've been very open to us protecting all the things we just talked about, like the history, the lore, and we want to respect our current fans and also open up the IP to new viewers, new players, new fans as well. So it's been a very positive experience, both legendary and angry films. I mean, if you think about it, we have the producers of the Transformers and Dune teaming up with us on our little game.
that's cool. I didn't know that actually. I don't think, do they even have a studio producing for them? Because obviously, FNAF got Blumhouse Studios, but I don't know who they have.
Which is super exciting.
No! Leave me!
Don't die! I'm so sorry.
Please, just go! Run!
Here we get letters
I'm so sad to see him gone. Is he alive? I need to know.
sometimes in the office at Mob or in other companies I work from, where people telling stories about how this game helped them through this difficult challenge in their
I love how cute Yarnaby looks. Like, he looks so cute and innocent, and then
life.
there
Or
you
they
go.
were sick in the hospital for 6 months, and the only thing they had was their Nintendo Switch or their little laptop, and they were able to play the game that you worked on and help them through that difficult time. So
Oh, that's sweet though. That is sweet.
it's something I always try to remind our developers, the team. You're not just making a game, you're creating something that in many ways can be a refuge from a world that is sometimes scarier than anything we could put in the game. And that is a huge blessing in a way. It's such a great gift to be able to give to the world, not just this cool experience and the mystery and the horror and the moments of excitement, but also that little bubble that people can explore and find a community and find more about themselves or what they're passionate about. I got to meet so many lovely people inside the Puppy Playtime community, and I am always thankful for them every single day.
So passionate. It is just, it never ceases to amaze me, honestly.
That's the voice actor of Lily Loveburn. Okay, so I don't know why. When I first heard her voice, I generally thought it was Ellie's Lovelock, the voice actor of Mummy Longlegs.
I love it too. I love people's willingness to share their passion outwardly.
If I show you a picture of her, you would never expect her to be the voice actor of Lily.
Your passion
oh my
has
god.
to be loud enough for it to like take effect and for people to kind of notice, and it is really cool to watch people befriend each other. I love the community aspect of fandom in general.
She moves slower than I thought, actually. Are those the chapter? Wait, they do not look like the chapter 3 hands. Unless, to be fair, my FOV in chapter 3 was really bad.
We have lots of great stories to tell that go beyond what the one that we're kind of currently in the middle of. Which ones we choose to tell and how and when we choose to tell them is beyond the scope of my role. But I will say that we are definitely sensitive to the fact that we don't want to drag this out forever, right? We want to make sure that people feel they're satisfied with the experience, that it has momentum, that it's going somewhere interesting still.
I feel that's why people are quite, biased about, a seventh chapter. Like obviously they literally said they don't want to, drag it out. I wouldn't mind if they drag it out, but at the same time, it's like, will they have enough, lore to continue making in games? That's why I think people are saying, okay, chapter 6 is going to be the last one. I think that's why Markiplier even said that, he's not playing chapter 6. So
everything we're making, we're putting in the full amount of passion and attention to make it its own standalone worthy experience. We're definitely not in that space where people are worried like, oh, they're just trying to drag it out for more dollars, but that's not it at all. Like, we care so much about what we're making, and we really do believe that.
Yeah, because that's the thing, because obviously Mob Games is obviously an indie company, right? They're not owned by anyone. They're their own publishers. They're their own, studio stuff. So that's why I feel like, bigger game studios, like Activision, Epic Games, they only care about money, EA as well, they care about the money because obviously that they want to make a profit out of their games, That's why with like that's why like, they obviously increased the V-Bucks in Fortnite because obviously their game is probably not making a profit anymore. Well, they probably are, but making a small profit instead. And obviously with Chapter 5, so many people bought it. They even said at the start of the video, 110,000 people bought the game in 3 hours, which again is insane to think of, man.
What we had in Chapter 5 deserved.
Indie companies and indie developers never care about money. Trust me. I don't think there is one indie game or indie company or just indie game developer, right, that cares about money. I don't think there is one. Unless Garden of Banban is one, I doubt it. I doubt it.
Stand on its own and deserved a little bit more beyond that. How much beyond that, I can't speak to exactly, but I can assure you there's no intention to drag it out.
It's goodbye from me.
That's why that is interesting because obviously there's a lot of answers being said. We haven't really got an answer really. They give us like random like fucking answers like the fucking Riddler would say.
And it's goodbye from Huggy. Goodbye.
Who the fuck is that guy? Was that VHS tape? Yeah. Goodbye. You're waving too long. Wow, that was a fun video. A bit long than I anticipated. Again, I've been talking quite a lot to be fair, but man, that's weird that the BBC actually, talked about Power Playtime. That is so interesting. I definitely learned a thing or two about it. Definitely learned a thing. Again, it's so that the BBC covered Poppy Playtime. Oh my god! But thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, then subscribe and have a massive ton. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.